Hi there, I'm Karen Roby here with ZDNet and Tech Republic, joined by ZDNet's Greg Nichols, and we're talking today about data visualization using mixed reality. And Greg, I know you've done a lot of research on this particular topic, and right out of the gate, just talk about why mixed reality just may redefine the way we interact with data.
Yeah, thanks, Karen. It's really a matter of the right technology coming along to solve a really pressing problem. And here's the problem. Big data over the last 10 years has yielded this extraordinary volume of data, the big data revolution that is. And that's thanks to things like, distributed Internet of Things, sensors, for example, that are capturing data on how machines perform, how people interact with the world. They're capturing data on health via activity trackers and medical devices, data on the health of our planet. And the thing is, all of that data by itself is completely useless. It's just numbers on a spreadsheet. So we need a way to interpret it. And data scientists apply a lot of really sophisticated models to interpret data, and increasingly artificial intelligence is being used to really go in and mine insights from data to kind of go deeper into those data sets and interpret those data sets. But when it comes to most humans, the people who actually have to use the data to make decisions, and we're talking about decision makers at companies by and large, we're just not very good at using data yet. And there's pretty broad consensus about that. Most people, when presented with data, even in a simplified form, their eyes just glaze over. That's certainly true with me whenever I'm confronted with a spreadsheet of any kind. So humans just aren't good at juggling data, this human in particular. So the solution we've come up with, and it's not a new solution, this has been going on for at least a couple hundred years, is to use techniques to visually represent data. So you, of course, have things like graphs and charts that allow us to make sense of pretty big data sets at a glance. And there's a really rich history to data visualization, which is part of this bigger field known as visual communication. There's this guy, Edward Tufte. He's one of the fathers of modern data visualization, and he wrote a book in the 1980s called The Visual Display of Quantitative Information that has this great quote that I love, which kind of sums up the field. And that quote, if I can find it here: "Excellence in statistical graphics consists of complex ideas communicated with clarity, precision, and efficiency." So that's kind of the motivator in this field of visual communication. And you have all kinds of great examples of this. One of my favorite is this example from Napoleonic France. Charles Joseph Menard came up with this diagram of France's invasion of Russia. And it depicts the attrition of soldiers over time and geography as kind of this ribbon that gets progressively thinner and skinnier as it goes along the graph. And it's a really striking example of how a big set of data can be visually represented very elegantly and can be interpreted as a glance. So those 2D visual representations have been really important to how we interpret data as a species for a long time. But now that we have more and more data than ever before, we need more powerful visualization techniques. And mixed reality allows for this three-dimensional visualization. And not only that, it opens up the possibility, at least, that a person can go in and manipulate data sets in real time to understand them even better. So that we can actually walk around these data sets, we can peer inside, we can click, we can change variables. So the answer to the question is that mixed reality platforms are giving people more meaningful access to more data than ever before.
All right, and I think that graph that you were talking about there, Greg, of course, is included in your article. It's really interesting. Talk to for us, expand if you can, on how the data visualizations, how they're going to evolve, what we're seeing here.
Yeah, absolutely. The cool thing is we don't really know the answer to that question. So there's a company called Virtualytics, for example, that's really leaning into collaborative 3D environments. And right now, one of the big knocks against mixed reality is that it's largely a single player experience. And that's really held up mixed reality from broad consumer adoption. So on the consumer side, we've kind of seen mixed reality, virtual reality, and augmented reality fall flat when it comes to things like video games and entertainment experiences, because people are really siloed off in those experiences and don't have that interactivity with other people. So interestingly, data visualization could be this huge opportunity on the technology side to pursue this multiplayer immersive environment. So Virtualytics, this company, has these 3D data sets that multiple people can experience at the same time. And they can manipulate them, they can work together to recognize patterns. There's another company called DataView VR, and they offered this great metaphor that I love. So their data visualization environment, they said, imagine hovering above a forest with your colleagues, and those colleagues are sort of represented as these avatars kind of floating in air next to you. You can clearly see the entire forest. It makes sense to you that this thing looks like a forest. Then you can look down and you can see individual trees. And each tree has these 6 clearly recognizable dimensions of data that you can see, that you can visually recognize. And you can tweak those dimensions of data. You can turn some on, turn some off. You can change what the dimensions are. And along with your colleagues, you can start to see these patterns in this broader forest based on which dimensions you're choosing to look at. Your colleagues can then add new data to the data set, or they can tweak the variables so you can see kind of where they're coming from. So I think the collaborative element to this is really the future of AR and VR visualizations.
Yeah, that's a really cool way to look at it, Greg. And I know you said your eyes glaze over, as do mine, when I see a big spreadsheet of data. But when it comes to the mixed reality future of data visualization, what are you personally most excited about?
So a couple things, I guess. One is the way that augmented reality is going to enable us to project relevant data onto the real world. So you can imagine a bunch of different scenarios that might apply, but consider looking over a factory floor, for example. You have your entire production line in front of you, and above that production line, in sort of the exact right location for each element, each machine, you can see statistical data about when your next service is going to come up, or how your entire operation is performing on a piece by piece level. I think that's a really powerful tool that's going to enable people to make a lot of decisions in real time, based on large volumes of data that are being collected by these IoT sensors, these distributed sensor networks, in every logistics warehouse or factory. But right now, we're still very hard to penetrate. So that's going to be just kind of a great hands-on tool to allow people to engage that data. The other thing that excites me about mixed reality and data visualization is really that when visual communication started to gain purchase in the 90s and in the 2000s as its own field, there was really this artistic renaissance in how data is presented. And the result of that today is, if you open a magazine or a newspaper, you're likely to encounter just a huge array of data visualizations, of ways to interpret data that go way beyond like the classical bar graph. And what we're seeing with, we're at the very beginning of this, it's still the Wild West, but what we're seeing with mixed reality is that there's really this opportunity for these visual metaphors and for this artistic license to be taken with how data is presented. And I think we're in store for some really, really cool stuff. A couple examples that I've seen are like a churning ocean, and it looks like a real ocean, but the wave heights and the different colors of the water throughout this kind of scene of an ocean are representative of different clusters of data. And it's just this really powerful way to envision data that just makes sense, because humans sort of need these visual benchmarks to process things that otherwise they just would have no chance of processing. So I think that's where the real opportunity lies, and where I get really excited about this.
Well, it really is a fascinating topic, Greg, and we appreciate your insight on this. The full article can be found on ZDNet, along with many other resources we want you to check out. Thanks for watching.